Welcome to episode number 55 of Just Go Grind, a show that focuses on helping you launch and grow a business and navigate the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. I'm Justin Gordon, your host, and in this episode, we have Andy Bilinsky, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lensabl. And Lensabl is the convenient and affordable online prescription lens service. You can get the lens you need in your own frames without leaving home. It's super easy. People are loving it. It's affordable, and that's why Lensabl is crushing it. They've raised about $4 million so far and are making a ton of progress. Andy's career spans Live Nation, HauteLook, Beachmint, and he even grew, and sold his company ChirpAds. He has a ton of experience in this space, and in this episode, we go through how Lensabl actually got started, actually spawned from a different company he started, how he grew the company to the point it's at now. We talk a little bit about raising money and that $4 million of venture capital they've had so far, and also actionable tips and strategies later on in the episode, so be sure to follow along till the end. As always, the show notes are at justgogrind.com/podcast. You can support the show by subscribing and leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts, iTunes. The show is also found on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and even YouTube. It's everywhere, folks. And the recently launched Just Go Grind Facebook community can be found at facebook.com/groups/justgogrind. You can also find that if you go to justgogrind.com/podcast. Without further ado, here is Andy Bilinsky, the CEO and co-founder of Lensabl. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you on and talk about all of this different things you've done in your career, and especially Lensabl, of course. But before we dig into that, I definitely want to ask about entrepreneurship in general. Like, where did you get your start as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think the start can come from a lot of different places or times in your life. With me, it was really just an inherent quality I think that I had. I was always a very curious younger person. And oddly, I come from a family of, more kind of traditional professionals, a doctor, a teacher, my brother's an attorney. But, from a young age, I was kind of always snooping around different, had a lot of different interests, and really kind of at any point I saw an opportunity to make money or to get a prize or something, I was trying to. I remember as young as maybe, 7 or 8 years old, they have book fairs at your elementary school, and you can, sell books to people in your community. We would go door to door. You'd get like a big stuffed animal at the end if you did. And there was always who would get the biggest stuffed animal in my school. So, it was just kind of that, as I would say, a very, very early stage. I'm sure I did a lemonade stand here and there. For me, it kind of started in high school. Along with 3 buddies, we actually created a club in our high school, and it was called the Young Entrepreneurs Club. I would say we all probably had that similar background type of a story that I just described, and what the club was going to do and why we were starting it, I think, was a little bit more unsure, and mainly for extracurricular for our resume for college. But we ended up kind of structuring almost like an interview series with local entrepreneurs or business owners in our city, coming in and kind of talking to groups of students, and eventually kind of decided to start a business, out of the club. And we were the first ever business that started out of our high school that was kind of like, legal within the high school and licensed. They got to license the name. And so we sold agenda books, like little calendar day planners for each class, to all the kids in the high school. We went out into the local community and sold advertising space in the books. And, it ended up being 3 of my 4 years in high school. It was a business we ran, and sold it back to the school actually when we all graduated. And so I'd say from a true business entrepreneurship perspective, that was really where I got my start.
That's awesome, man. And, I think a lot of entrepreneurs have that kind of early experience in some capacity or another. And it's always like looking back, you can see, oh, that was kind of the start of everything. But, what was the draw for you in terms of entrepreneurship? Was it just like, oh, let's see if we can make some money? Was it just fun to try to sell things? Like, what was it for you? I'm just curious.
I would say the money is and was always a factor, obviously. I mean, obviously, but I'd say, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, it is a non-traditional route to generate lots of income or wealth for yourself, for sure. And so the great part about it is it's, can be uncapped. The terrible part about it is there is literally no security. But so I would say that was one factor, but really just my kind of curiosity. You got to be who you are. I didn't have any kind of from an educational perspective, any deep passions, right? I wasn't, super passionate about history or law or medicine or science or anything of that nature. I just like business. Anytime I'd see a new business, I'd think of ways to change it, make it better, things they were doing wrong or right or whatever, it might be. And so I think it was just kind of that inherently in me and my mind wandered that direction. And every time I kind of got into a company I was working for or an idea that I was thinking about, the next day a new one would come to mind and I would literally try and juggle as many things at one time as I could, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more. I don't necessarily recommend that. Early on, that was just kind of how I found myself existing. And I think that is really what led me to wanting to truly be an entrepreneur. I went to undergrad business school at Ross, University of Michigan, and they had a really, really cool entrepreneurship program. I had a professor, his name was Len. I'm going to botch the last name, but it'll come to me. Anyways, he was a local Ann Arbor entrepreneur, an extremely successful businessman. And honestly, while I wasn't a fan of the businesses he necessarily started, he was just this cool guy. He got to achieve the level of success where he got to do what he wanted and say what he wanted and kind of come up with ideas as he wished and got into just a lot of cool stuff. And I wouldn't say he's what made me decide on this path, because I had a number of years of work experience for other companies before I kind of went out on my own. But that was definitely maybe, a little bit of icing on the cake for me.
Yeah. And you mentioned having obviously the experience in high school entrepreneurially, and then also going to college and kind of having that experience as well. So taking those experiences, like how did that impact what you did in terms of jobs coming out of college then?
Well, there is actually a tie. I think nowadays it's a lot more normal to start your own business right out of college than maybe it was, 10 years ago when I was in college, or, 14 years ago even. Just the technology has done how younger people can now do things a lot easier, more, or kind of at a younger age and achieve levels of success. I'd say it's gotten much easier, as time has gone on. But I actually, so kind of building on my entrepreneurship experience in high school, I had a passion for live events when I was in college. And there was half of that to me ended up meaning, throwing parties, but parties where people paid to get in, or we brought in entertainment, live entertainment that people were interested in paying for. And so music was a passion of sorts for me. And so I actually joined the concert committee at the University of Michigan, was the vice president of that committee for 2 years. And then my sophomore year of college, a friend of mine and I decided that we wanted to throw concerts. And we wanted to do it on our own because I now had a little bit of background in concert production and promotion, and he had an interest in it too. And so we created a standalone business that was throwing local shows at small music venues in Ann Arbor, and eventually became a larger idea where we were looking to throw kind of more, I wouldn't say stadium shows, but bigger name acts and money for it. And so that business, again, never ended up being a huge business or anything, but was something that we did in college and had a lot of fun with. And my first job out of college, much differently than everybody in the undergrad finance focused business program at Michigan that went to Wall Street and did investment banking and things like that. I actually went to work on the industry side at Live Nation. And I was an internal consultant in the strategy group. So I'd say at Michigan, everyone was either an investment banker or a consultant, but they worked for one of the holding companies. And so I actually, found a company that was tied very, very closely to something I had experience doing the few years previously, and kind of married the two. And so to me, that was kind of how I used that experience, being a young entrepreneur, to kind of tie back into my career after that.
Yeah, and looking at the different roles, obviously, that you've had since then, it was like Live Nation, HauteLook, Beachmint, and then your own company, ChirpAds, but a lot of that's business development. So just want to touch on the business development side a little bit. I guess what are some of the things that first come to mind when you think of business development, like the essential things you should do with the company? It's always going to vary, but I'm just curious on that side of things.
Yeah, I would say business development is about the most generic and broad type of job you can have, because it literally means something different at every single company. Mine was unique. After I left Live Nation, I joined a startup called HauteLook, which was a flash sale business. 2009, the very kind of beginning of that flash sale trend. And there was a very, very large, or one that was kind of the leader in the space called Guilt Group out of New York. And then HauteLook was the kind of next in line, the West Coast equivalent based here in LA. And one of the guys I became very friendly with at Live Nation ended up going over to HauteLook and taking over the head of marketing role over there, and literally needed to build a marketing team from scratch. And he actually, kind of came to me and told me about the company and offered me an opportunity to come work with him. And he asked what I like to do. I was, so I wouldn't say, marketing is very, again, broad in general, and there are specialties within it. But at the time, I didn't have experience other than I said I like to do deals and I like to do partnerships. And so that was basically, we kind of structured an opportunity to do business development, be the kind of partnerships guy, the liaison between really any third-party company that had any value for a variety of reasons to the business and the business. And I was the intermediary. So we developed, of course, strategies. We wanted to do X, Y, and Z in the social media world, and we wanted to build our email list without paying for it. So we would go out and seek relationships with large content publishers like a Hearst or Condé Nast and figure out ways to get in front of their audiences to then generate new members for HauteLook site and things like that. So I would say it's a general term, a broad term, and then ends up being very, very specific to the business that you're in. But I would say it is most of the time, and if we fast forward to Lensabl now, business development is we are seeking out brands to have relationships with to sell within our platform, right? There's one version of it where you can just go out and buy inventory, which then becomes fully your risk, but kind of creating a unique reason or unique type of structure that you can go out and source and pitch to brands that maybe can get, provide you inventory without paying for it or on consignment or something like that. I would say it's very similar in what I've done previously, where we were trying to get eyeballs and visibility and users and traffic without paying for it, at least in the traditional sense of how you buy media online. And so that's, so I think it's identifying a business opportunity. It's creating a kind of presentation or structure that partners potentially could be interested in, and then going out and sourcing a list of people that you want to try and pitch it to, and seeing what kind of business you can generate off of that.
Yeah. And I don't want to get into Lensabl in a minute, but I have to go back a little bit. So with pitching these different brands or trying to get these content deals, what's your approach to them? Because these are obviously like large publishers. You have maybe like a new company. Your goal is obviously grow your email list and get more customers. But what does that pitch even look like, or how do you craft that?
It's a great question. I would say, and I don't have any, this is the structure or this is how you should do things, and I'm really creating it on the fly here. But, first it's kind of, well, what is it that we want from this partner, right? That's kind of understanding, that's the first thing you have to determine. The second is, what about what we offer is going to be intriguing to them, right? If there's nothing that's intriguing to them, then they've got no reason to even listen to you or take a call or a meeting. And so it's kind of understanding those two pieces first. And then I'd say based off of that, it's creating a set of assets or opportunities or value that you can kind of provide them if they do decide to come and work with you within the context that you're pitching, and building a presentation of that. I would say from there, it's really identifying a kind of a list of people or contacts or even just companies that you would love to be able to speak to. And from there, I always found a ton of success on LinkedIn, really just cold reaching out to people whose job descriptions seemed like it was the right person or could at least lead me to the right person. It's a lot more crowded these days, but back then it was a little bit easier. And I still use LinkedIn almost religiously to do that. And so, at the time, fortunately, we were kind of a fast growing business that in the space we were playing in had a lot of good PR that was coming out. And, I was not really at a place of disadvantage when I was going out to try to get a meeting or pitching, which is a lot more helpful, of course. If you are and you're a new company and you don't have, clout in the industry or people don't know about you, if you are doing something unique and valuable, then you likely, have an opportunity. And if you can't, then hopefully people are just happy that you tried, and, and maybe make some people's business change over time, and whether it's right for them then and now, or, 6 months or a year or 2 years down the line, you've kind of planted a seed. And so I think it's always just, kind of stick to the script, try to be as direct as possible with what it is that you want and why it can be good for both parties. But, lots of visuals, lots of, kind of case studies, if you have them, and things like that are always super helpful in those types of approaches.
Yeah, and just a quick follow up on that one. So, yeah, getting your foot in the door helpful by having something unique, obviously, to offer them. You have to think of it from their perspective, and then from a more of like a repeat working with them perspective. Like, how do you kind of maintain that relationship, or like try to do multiple deals versus like one time things, or that type of approach? I'm curious on how you approach that.
Yeah, I'd say obviously, I don't. It's not kind of like you just get one shot, but to some degree, you do, especially if the companies you're going out and pitching are larger or more established than yours. And so, I think you just need to. Not that you should only or never give it your all. You should always be giving it your all. But I would say that first relationship is the first impression, and if it works, then you're usually in a really good spot to be able to kind of build on your business with them and introduce other opportunities to work together. If it doesn't, then I think, the most important part is being kind of as transparent as you can, sharing as much data and, reasons why, and show that you're kind of doing what will do whatever it takes to try and make it successful. Because usually in business development deals, there's a lot that has to happen by both sides. I mean, the idea and the negotiation and the contract is one piece, but the actual execution or creation of whatever assets are required, I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it. So you just want to be cognizant of people's effort and time and try and not sugarcoat things if it don't work, but, give them your understanding as to why and try your best to fix it. But if it can't, just to, hope that they know you did your best. And usually that at least gives you a seat at the table for another conversation about something else in the future.
Right. And you never know, I guess, if, some people move on from those companies and move to other companies, at least you have a good relationship with them. I imagine that type of thing as well. And with the other businesses you've done, just real quick with ChirpAds, I saw that you built and sold in under a year. What was that, and how did you sell it so fast?
So ChirpAds was a unique business that was actually started myself and a co-founder, but along with the incubator Science Inc. They were the original incubator behind Dollar Shave Club and Dog Vacay and a handful of other exciting businesses. And so their model is a little bit different, right? They kind of incubate ideas and had some shared resources that, a variety of businesses in their portfolio were able to lean on. But we kind of came in to run a mobile ad business that was really, it was unique. When you think of mobile ads previously, the last few years, it was, kind of in the gaming space. You play apps, you see ads that people click on them to try to download other games and things like that. And that's a world that a lot of companies have made a whole lot of money. We took a slightly different approach, saw an opportunity in the space of kind of long tail content websites. So mobile websites that traditionally just didn't monetize their mobile ad inventory well. We love the Facebook kind of native ad unit or platform as a model to kind of go after with these other sites. And so imagine, on ESPN.com, you're scrolling the headlines. They all kind of look the same, right? It's a little tile that has a bullet point, and then whatever the headline after that is, we would actually build an ad unit that looked exactly like that. So from a design perspective, we would basically do a deal with ESPN.com, we would place it onto their site, and then we would, on the other side, go out and do deals with advertisers and attempt to fill that space in as best we could. So, it was just a unique idea that had kind of a large opportunity in Science. Luckily, we had a great partner, so they saw, another larger company in the gaming space actually, so doing something that we didn't do, but was kind of available for sale. And then they ended up kind of thinking that what we did and what that company did jointly could be, a really powerful platform. And so kind of brought the two businesses together in a joint offering. And
that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, something that's so quick and it makes a lot of sense. You see an opportunity to pursue it, but not everyone necessarily thinks like that. I think it happens that you have the experience beforehand, obviously in entrepreneurship and with different companies to then even be able to execute on that. And that brings me to Lensabl. I just want to where did Lensabl get start from?
Yeah, Lensabl was the byproduct of another business that I had started along with a co-founder back in the early part of 2012. We saw an opportunity back then to create an eyewear brand online. The accessories are something that are, when I was at HauteLook, I saw brands that I maybe hadn't heard of or didn't have, tons of recognition, but sold cool product and were able to generate lots and lots of income very, very quickly. And I think accessories have very, very high perceived value. And so, these were brands that were kind of popping up out of nowhere. And through that experience, I thought that was something I could do. So I partnering with a buddy of mine who had some experience in the eyewear space and on the manufacturing side. And we came together to create a brand. It was called Ivory Mason. At first, the plan was just to create our own frames and then sell them on the flash sites. But after we had a pretty successful first year doing that, we decided to turn our focus back to the direct-to-consumer side of things. And it's really when Warby Parker was gaining notoriety and really starting to scale and grow as a brand. And we all know what they've turned into today, obviously. So the part that was missing for us at the time was the prescription part, right? We had frames, but we didn't know a thing about prescription. And we knew that that's what the business that we wanted to do and kind of copy what Warby was doing, but just with our own brand. And so we ended up teaching ourselves the prescription business. And after about 6 months figuring out how to integrate, that supply chain and product offering into our site, and ended up running that business for the next 3.5 years. And I would say we love that business, but there's a lot of complexities. There's a lot of challenges in an inventory business. So when you're, frame manufacturing it's just a long process, 3-4 month production times. And you're always kind of designing for, many seasons ahead of you, no different than really in the apparel space, but specifically in the frame space, those were issues. And so you always sat on a lot of inventory. Whereas in the prescription lens part of the business, we actually, we worked with an optical lab, which stocks all of the lens inventory and really allows you to kind of create, order on demand or when orders come in. And so you didn't need to sit on inventory there. And so I would say from a business perspective, we much prefer the non-inventory business to the inventory business, even though it's a different product. And then I'd say there were, very commonly known pain points in the prescription lens world for a very long time, far before we've been in the space, that, they've just been extremely expensive. Traditionally, you had to go into, an optometrist or an optical retail store to get that done, right? See a doctor to get an eye exam, and a lot of just customer pain points as it relates to that type of experience. Every kind of service and product that we really liked about it and saw an opportunity in. And then just a variety of different use cases for consumers that we were the consumer who loved the frames that we were buying or that we were making, and our script would change and we would need new lenses, but we didn't feel the need to always purchase a new frame. Right? We were kind of seeing that in the industry a lot. And so really just kind of out of all of those things sprung this idea that we felt like we didn't, we're not seeing anywhere else. No one else was really innovating on. Fortunately, the kind of things you could do online for the optical world were much more prevalent today than they had been traditionally. And so we took a shot at it and, kind of out of that turned Lensabl.
Yeah. And with that, so obviously people have ideas all the time for different things, or you see opportunities, but I'm curious on how you kind of vetted that or did the research to be like, yeah, let's do the lenses. Like, what does that research process look like? Or like, what are you doing to figure out like, okay, this is actually something we're going to pursue?
Yeah. For us, it was a little bit unique in that it was kind of, we recognized based on existing customer inquiries from our frame brand, right? I mean, we were kind of doing a portion of this business and we had a customer base that we could lean on for more information. And so, we were getting inbound inquiries from customers that got prescription lenses with the frames that we were selling them, but asking if they could send in frames from other brands that they had because their prescription had updated or something of that nature. And so the kind of consumer demand portion of it almost came to us. Based off of that, we were able to, put together a series of questions and surveys that we could go out to that, that existing customer group and kind of determine a little bit more information. Research can be many, many ways. You can hire companies to do it. You can do focus groups. You could literally just come up with an idea and go out and try and test it. But we were fortunate in that, we had a base of the kind of exact customers we thought we would want for this type of business, with them being the ones telling us that it was a business that didn't exist for them and something that they wanted.
Yeah, it's a perfect mix. And at that time, by the time you got to Lensabl, so you already had the Ivory Mason company for a couple years. But what was the team then when Lensabl was started, I guess? What was the consistency of that team?
Ivory Mason was just a few people outside of me and my co-founder, some kind of operations people and things of that nature. So that business actually shut down entirely. And so Lensabl was a standalone idea with my co-founder and I as the kind of only two people working on it initially, both from the idea phase into the kind of minimum viable product. We raised a little bit of friends and family capital before we had anybody else helping in the business. Now, fortunately, a friend investor of ours had what I guess you could call a little accelerator business, or had experience helping kind of super early stage companies grow a little bit. So once they came in and became an investor, they, essentially acted as our partner at the very beginning stages to help us, think through the rest of the pieces to get the business live. And that was from, design and branding of the site to development to kind of early marketing plan, and then understanding what, resources we would need, either agencies or in-house to really launch the business and go from there. So that was kind of where things began.
Yeah. And I know people have an idea of something and they think about fundraising. I've even talked to people at USC in the MBA program and think about ideas they have, they need funding for. And I've had people on the show before do the friends and family, type of round. For you guys, was it like you knew a certain number you were trying to hit from that friends and family round of raising, or, pre-seed, I guess, whatever you would call it? Like, how would you approach that?
Yeah, totally. We had a friends and family and then a pre-seed. So this was kind of like, we had an idea. We had a really, really simple version of our site, and that was it. This was kind of the idea being spoken about to someone who decided that it was something they thought was a fantastic idea, and they invested, and they were investors. We jointly with them determined the amount of money based on, a handful of milestones we wanted to get to with that first money. So it was not like we went out seeking capital and it was X amount for X percent of the business. So, that's a unique story that doesn't happen often, where it kind of falls into your lap a little bit. I would say when it goes, at the early stage, at least when it comes to fundraising, yeah, you need to be, very, very meticulous about how much you need and what it's for and where you think it can get you, and use that combination as what number you come up with, of course, and then the support of what that number will do for you when you go out to actually, try and raise money.
Yeah, and then that's obviously crazy important because you've had the experience, so you knew kind of what you needed to do with that. And then from like the initial stages of Lensabl, like how did you get the initial growth from the company, the initial customers, and that first kind of inflection, I guess?
The first inflection point was we had somebody kind of right before we launched the site, and just after, we had somebody that was helping us with PR, third party, just an individual. And, we weren't spending lots of money on marketing or anything like that. We were just trying to tell people about it, get the name out there, do as much organic kind of marketing of ourselves as possible. But PR was one place that we played a little bit. And we had the opportunity to do an interview with the tech segment editor of a live news network, one of the major news stations, but it was more localized kind of the Northern California region. So Channel 7 News, ABC 7 News in NorCal. And it wasn't a live interview. It was a Skype interview that we were kind of just explaining, a little bit about our business, and didn't really know that it was even being taped or anything like that. Out of nowhere, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, we would get notifications on our phone if a person signed up or a new order came in or something like that. And frankly, the phones just started blowing up. In a 24-hour period, I think, we had more signups and orders that came in than we had in the last, 2 months before that in total. Ended up realizing the next day is that this interview that we did was actually live on San Francisco ABC 7 News, at 6 o'clock the night before. And fortunately, then it got posted online and it got picked up by a bunch of different ABC affiliates. And honestly, that was our inflection point at the very, very early stage for sure, enough to kind of get us going, and then launch a very, very, small amount of digital marketing on top of that, Facebook and Google search, to just, make sure that there was kind of constant traffic and could get further learnings. And then luckily, about a month and a half or 2 months after that, we got introduced to who ended up being our, kind of pre-seed funding partner, company out of LA called Amplify LA, which is the premier early stage accelerator program here in the city.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I feel like because of the concept and how you knew from the customers and everything how much of a need it was, it made a lot of sense to go the PR route, because it was something that people could like, okay, this is obvious. Like you custom lenses, like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Why isn't someone not doing this? Oh, Lensabl's doing it. Like, I don't think everyone necessarily goes the PR route right away. Like, how did you know to even do that? You said that you had the friend.
Yeah, that's a tough one because, there's really just 2 routes to go. Well, I guess there are 3 routes to go. The third, or maybe it's the first, is the kind of luckiest route where you can somehow via, just social media and blog if you have it, or, a large network you have access to that you can kind of for free start to get out what you do and build engagement around that and community around that. Of course, that's the goal, to spend as little as possible and get in front of as many people as possible. But it's, a lot easier said than done, especially when you're selling a product. And for us, especially when you're selling a product that is just so unique. For one, it's a completely different buying behavior. Most people never even thought that lenses were sold alone. So we had a lot more up against us when it came to getting people to understand what we did through, free channels. I would say the PR route was the one we went to really because it was the most affordable. We only had so much money left in the bank at that point, and getting good on digital media, digital customer acquisition takes time. You could have 30 years experience, and every business, every product is all different. And so you have to know that a lot of things you're going to test and they're not going to work. If you have a business where everything works from day one, then find me. I'd love to invest. But I think that happens. And, so for us, we didn't want to just give this a 30 or 60-day shot and spend the rest of the money we had and hope that things picked up, but kind of knew that we weren't going to be experts at marketing, replacement lenses online at that point. Thought that we could probably get more bang for our buck on the PR route, and fortunately had a resource that we were able to do it affordably with. And so for us, it was just that choice that we made, and luckily it panned out. But I'd say those are probably the different ways, and you really just have to identify what's right for your business at the time.
Yeah, and early on in the company, how were you spending your time primarily? Obviously, you had a co-founder, and how were the roles split up initially?
Yeah, early on, depending on how many people you have, and usually it's not very many. At the beginning part is, you've got to do a little bit of everything. Now, from a title perspective, I was the CEO, he was the COO. We had a development resource that was working with us, and eventually hired kind of an operations and marketing person as well to help us out. But really, everybody was doing everything. So early on, you're trying to build a business. You're trying to get a website off the ground. You're trying to ship out orders. You're trying to get people to know about you. You're dealing with customer service, and everyone was really just kind of all participating. And I think you have to do that, until you have more support. And for us, it was a very long time before we had additional support. So primarily, I was focused on the marketing side and a lot of the customer support, where, my co-founder was a little bit more focused on, the operation, the kind of dealing with our lens supplier, making sure that orders got made correctly and shipped out properly and that type of thing. And then we'd all kind of work on everything else together until we had more money and were able to hire more people.
Right. Yeah. Life of a startup, you kind of just had to roll with it. And then, you mentioned obviously it changes when you get money, and then eventually you raise a few $1,000,000. So how did things change then? And what was the focus at that point after raising some funding?
Yeah. That's not too long ago at this point. Only about 6 months ago is when we closed our first, we'll call it institutional round of capital. So we did have a $3 million infusion into the business, which was wildly helpful. And so at that point, it takes a little bit of time to, you've hopefully identified where the support that you need is, and, created job descriptions and things like that. But recruiting is not easy. It's extremely time consuming. It's, lots of conversations, lots of meetings, lots of people you got to meet with, because I think, the team that you hire early on that will hopefully be with you the longest and be the most integral in kind of getting your business through a lot of the turbulent times at the beginning is, I don't want to say is the most important, but is extraordinarily important. And so you need to not mess up when you are still at the early stage. You need to not mess up with your hires. And so a lot of my time and focus went to hiring. But at the same time, you can't take your foot off the gas. And that's the thing, really never stops. You always need to be growing. You always need to be innovating. You always need to be kind of optimizing. And so as CEO, you have responsibilities to your employees, of course. You have responsibilities to your customers. You have responsibilities to your board, and you have responsibilities to your investors. And at the end of the day, it all comes down on you. So I would say, if you can quickly get enough people on board to handle a lot of the more, day-to-day operation and free your time up to do things like hiring and report back to, investors and board and look to do business development deals. I mean, that's kind of where I'd like, where I want to focus my attention on ways that I can make sure the business is continuing to grow and meet goals and has, building a really great culture. But again, money can go very quickly, and you need to make sure that you're optimizing and maximizing what you get out of it. So I don't not operate the business, right? I still answer customer support inquiries. I'm in the weeds on a day-to-day basis, really for whatever needs support in the business at that time, in addition to all that other stuff. But I think as you kind of get bigger and have, more employees, there definitely are more kind of oversight things that you need to focus on. And you kind of always have to be growing, and you always have to be raising, and you always have to be projecting out the value in your business to press and to customers and to the street and to other potential investors. And it's really just like a nonstop amount of things that you have to always be doing.
Yeah. And I'm curious, and with that, to that point, like how much of your time is spent, or percentage breakdown exactly, but like high level vision, where the company's headed versus in the weeds day to day, putting out fires, whatever it may be. Like what's the split kind of, how does that go for you?
Yeah, I think luckily the high level vision and where the company is going is something that fortunately for us has not had to change very often. So, it gets laid out and it continues to get iterated on and communicated internally, but, it hasn't really had to be tons of new strategy. Now, we are very soon going to launch kind of the first new business unit that we have since launch in a couple of weeks, which will be selling frames and lenses. Now, not just lenses for frames that you already own. And so, that's something that kind of shifts focus and required a kind of new set of research in advance, and then strategy, and then communication internally and building. And so I would say 30% of my time is probably spent in that vision strategy portion of the business. Another, percentages, but quite a bit of it is still spent kind of doing day-to-day tasks in, the things that I'm focused on, kind of making sure that my direct reports are everything is going well, and that I'm getting all the right information, and we're tweaking things that might not be working jointly. And so that's quite a bit of it. And then I would say, there's the always recruiting, always fundraising, always, having to report back and be out in the space to try and further your branding and how much people know about you and do cool deals and stuff like that is probably the remainder. So, but, in the office every day as early as possible, work as late as possible, and none of that slows down. We're definitely in scale mode, and we got a long way to go before we get to where we want to be. And, it requires everybody to kind of have that work ethic. Yeah.
And just to dig a little bit deeper on that, meant office early, stay late. Like I'm always curious as to what people schedules are kind of like. I mean, it's so in flux with the startup, but like getting to the office, what time are you getting to the office, and kind of like take me through your day? I'm just curious as to that.
Yeah, I don't sleep a ton. I'm usually up around 6. Some people will say that's sleeping in. Some people will be like, "You're crazy. How do you wake up that early?" But when you're, when all the responsibility, or quite a bit of the responsibility, falls on you, you need to be thinking. You just have a lot running through your head, and it's very, very difficult to get that out of it. So it does affect your sleeping patterns to some degree. But I just try and get to sleep early. So I'm up, early. Usually there's a first round of kind of emails that are coming overnight. And we're in a consumer business, right? So my 6 a.m. is East Coast 9 a.m. and my 10 p.m. is right. There's just stuff coming in at all times throughout the day. So fair amount of kind of stuff you want to get off your plate, so it's not too daunting once you really truly start the day. Have a coffee to wake up. Try and be in the office by 9, but depending on a normal day, that's usually what it is. And we're in the office until 5, 6 o'clock. But frankly, the business never stops. So I like to clear my head and get away for a little bit and go work out after that. But I'm back home by 7:30, 8 o'clock, and usually doing at least another hour or so of emails and kind of finalizing things I didn't get to during the day or whatever it is. So it's almost a revolving circle of that every day, including weekends. Maybe you try to get yourself some freedom and clear your mind as often as you can, which is vitally important. But when to get a business to this stage, you need to live and breathe it. And I'd say one of my recommendations anytime anyone's trying to start a business, there's no possible way before you've started it to know what it will require as it starts to grow and becomes a real thing. I think you have to. The one thing, and again, until you experience it, there's no way to prep for it, but you need to know that it is going to be your life fully through and through. Every ounce of your energy, will have to go into it to get it to a place that you want, and then to keep it there. And that is, not traditional. That's, the entrepreneurial life requires that. Oftentimes you work for a company, or you have a more, kind of traditional professional job, and you're in the office from a certain time to a certain time, but you go home, you can kind of let go a little bit. That's not the way it works when you have your own company and in a, more entrepreneurial career path.
Right. And building off that just a little bit, In terms of the business itself, then, like, what are the biggest challenges or obstacles you've had to overcome? Because entrepreneurship as a whole, obviously, it's tough. It's tough to grow a business. And I'm just curious, like Lensabl, like, what's been the challenges for you guys?
I think there's a lot of things, but I would say, from people probably listening to this, thinking about starting a business, I mean, it's really the funding part of things is really chicken and egg or cat and mouse or whatever the right way to describe it. You oftentimes, like, starting a business is expensive. It just costs money. There's just a lot of different things to do. And, oftentimes to get money, you need to show growth or success. And so it's always, you're kind of trying to grow while trying to, run as lean as you possibly can. And that's really a never ending prophecy. And so I would say that is always, because that messes with your psyche, right? Mentally, that's hard to comprehend and understand and, be successful in, but it also is true. And so that's probably the hardest thing to overcome initially. Getting product market fit, once you kind of have some capital and you can deploy it in the ways that you'd like to, right? So, the next really hard part is getting people to like what it is that you're doing. And also taking early feedback and taking it to heart and making very, very swift changes as often as you have to, even if it goes against, what you thought. Because in our business, right, our customers are our lifeline. And if they tell us something is not working or they're not being serviced properly or something, you need to make that change, even if it's costly or it's a lot of work or whatever. So those things are kind of what I'd say everybody has to think about. And then building, finding really good people that can share in your vision and understand it, and then actually, dive in with you. That's an extremely difficult thing to do, but one that is incredibly important.
Yeah, that part especially, how do you approach that then? Find the right people? Because obviously that's like, one of the most important things is find the right team or whatever for your business. But how do you do that then?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any, right way for sure. We've had a lot of success. There's a lot of good, new platforms that come out where aggregate a lot of the really, kind of top talent in the tech industry. I would say AngelList is where we've found an incredible amount of success sourcing new candidates and getting our, job postings out there. It's a free resource, or at least can be a free resource. A lot of free resources or inexpensive resources that exist, right? Even Craigslist, which seems like a bit of maybe an outlier for this type of a thing. We've had a little bit of success on there too. And you just make sure those first few hires are really good and they come from companies that, probably also have good talent. Maybe it's friends of theirs that from previous company that they can refer in. And so referrals are always the best. But, when you're going to start kind of seek out new talent, we believe, AngelList has been a really great place for us to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that people talk about because it seems like it's a super popular resource for finding people. And it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, people are there. So like go there. And I know also, like, I don't know if you guys use like ZipRecruiter or anything like that, but I know they sponsor a lot of podcasts and a lot of companies work with them, but there are ways to find people. It just seems, but those first few hires though are so critical to the business because that's what you're building it off of. So it's like, man, it's a lot of pressure, but you figure it out.
It sure is. But yeah, I think one of the questions I saw we were talking, maybe we can talk about was, are there good content places and resources that you've leaned on to learn and know how to do stuff? And I would say for me, no, but I'm unique in that I'm not much of a reader. And I think a lot of people have gotten really good insights from a lot of things like that. But what I think is it's a lot of on the job training. You're going to be presented with situations you've never experienced before. No book can tell you, and you learn as it happens. So a lot of this is you'll definitely grow as a person. You'll encounter situations that you thought maybe would be too challenging for you, and you'll deal with them. You'll gain a knowledge base through interaction and just other things you have to seek out and research that, will absolutely help you and get you to start thinking in different ways. And so I'm a big proponent of this is a very on-the-job training kind of thing, being an entrepreneur. And, at least a first-time entrepreneur, I would say I have a wealth of knowledge that I've garnered over the past couple of years by running this business that, I would definitely take into future ones and be able to kind of communicate out to people. But a lot of it was frankly just having to learn on the go.
Yeah. And one of the things you touched on like a little bit earlier that I want to go a little bit deeper on is taking, time away from the business. You mentioned like, weekends, trying to have clear your head or doing something to kind of unwind, whether it be working out or whatever. But what does that look like for you then in terms of stepping away from the business?
Yeah. At this point, I definitely, try and keep my weekends as much to me as possible. Definitely, a healthy amount of exercise and gym time, both during the week and on the weekends. I golf a lot, so I try, and that's a very time consuming activity, but I try to get out, once every other week or so on the weekends. They're, just fun activities with friends, make sure you're doing as much to kind of balance your mental state, as possible, and just really unwind. I go to the beach. Fortunately, here in LA, we can do that. And, that makes things a whole lot easier, when you need to get away. Normal things like that. But definitely, there's a portion of time that is saved for work every weekend, at least at this point.
Of course. I mean, you kind of have to at this point, like you said, like it's just, you don't really have that option, especially with the, the places you want to take the business. You kind of have to. So one of the last things I'm just wondering, looking back at your career so far, having started multiple companies, worked with multiple companies as well, what are some of those biggest lessons or takeaways you've had in your career so far?
Yeah. I think it's a steep hill to climb to be an entrepreneur and to start a business from scratch. It's wildly rewarding when it works. It's a feeling, the reward feeling is kind of unlike any other. And so I definitely recommend attempting to get there for sure. But, the takeaway is that you're going to hear no a lot. You're going to hear negative things, a lot of pessimism. It's just all, especially when it's a new idea, that anything new for people is just different, and it's hard to get them to buy in, and it's easier to talk down upon people's ideas or tell them they're doing things wrong. And it's easy for investors to say no, your business doesn't work for their strategy for whatever reason. And if you believe in what it is that you're doing, and you still have that passion and desire to make it great, that is an absolute foundational necessity to ever possibly be successful in business. And so really it's, kind of make sure that you're willing to take this, this very, very long and tumultuous mountain climb, and on the way, whatever obstacles you encounter, you take them and you adjust, but you don't let them kind of send you back down the mountain. If you truly feel that you are working on something that you are passionate about and is something you believe in.
Yeah, exactly what you said. Something you believe in, something that's worthwhile, then you might as well try it. If you fail, you fail, but you give it your all and see what happens.
I'd say you are probably starting a business and failing is really not a failure at all. And it is extremely, extremely difficult to do this even for a few months, right? Let alone for a few years. You sacrifice a lot of time that you could be building expertise in another industry that's a little bit more safe and traditional or whatever it might be. But you will come out far, far greater as far as your resume goes, as far as what you're capable of, and you as an asset to potentially another company or something after that, even if it doesn't work out, by having tried it. So I think be prepared for it, but know that there's really kind of a silver lining either way at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. And Andy, where can people go to learn more about Lensabl and everything you're working on?
Absolutely. Lensabl.com, Lensabl, no E at the end, although if you type in Lensabl with an E, it will still send you to our website. But Lensabl.com, we do prescription lenses for your frames. So we are going to be a significantly more affordable and convenient process for you to get really high quality prescription or non-prescription lenses in a frame that you already own. We send you a box. We take care of shipping. We take all the potential pain points out of the process for you. And, we hopefully save you a whole lot of money, and hope come check us out.
Awesome. And yeah, this is something we heard about you in class. I was like, yeah, this is amazing. It's this incredible company. It's going to be crushing it for a long time to come. And I will link to everything. I'll link to anything mentioned, as well as Lensabl as well in the show notes if you can't for some reason type that out. But Andy, thank you so much for the time today, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Just Go Grind. As always, the show notes are over at justgogrind.com/podcast, and you can support the show over at patreon.com/justgogrind. And please leave a rating and review over on iTunes. It does help more people find the show. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Have a great day.